Hey, Shalom, Yahweh, Shem Yahushai, Bashim Rukakadash, Barakatam, Barakadah, Yahweh, Shem Yahushai, Bashim Rukakadash. I'd like to say double honors to the apostles and elders, the great millstone, salutations to the sincere Akim that pushed this truth in all due diligence and sincerity. Shalom to the sincere elect of Yahweh, Shem Yahushai, man. If I haven't said already, double honors to our apostles and elders, the great millstone that rule well. Right now we've got trade wars going on, trade wars. And it's an interesting one because you see, America's just put 10% tariffs on every country in the world apart from Russia, North Korea, and there's a third nation that they haven't put tariffs on. But every other country has had at least a blanket 10% tariff slapped on them by the United States of America, man. America has put tariffs on everybody. Even the UK has been slapped with 10%. And I encourage brothers to watch this video here. It's on the Channel 4 news channel with an economist called Robert Kaplan. There's all sorts of videos on this topic right here. All sorts of videos. But I encourage brothers to watch this. And, this economist here breaks down what's going on. I'm just going to play a couple of seconds of this.
Trade wars can lead to real military conflict. It's amazing that we live in a world of so many brilliant financial experts, and yet democracy has produced someone who's an economic illiterate.
He wants to bring back a U.S. economy that belongs to the last century.
We're entering an era where all great powers are threatened, and great powers in decline have a tendency to lash out.
Hello and welcome to The Forecast. So Donald Trump has opened fire on a global trade war, and countries around the world are working out what...
You got the title there. You can watch it if you want to. But in a nutshell, it's called The Forecast. It's on Channel 4 News. Robert Kaplan, right? This economist breaks down exactly what's going on in the world right now. And he's basically saying the truth, which is Trump is economically illiterate. And I mean, he's got people that are more financially savvy and literate around him, but that's not the point. This man is purposely destroying the US economy. Why? Because at the end of the day, man, they want to bring in the RFID chip. That is the end goal. They want to chip everybody and have everybody in perpetual servitude under the elites, man. That is the goal of this regime. Now, you go, you see, the end goal. In fact, let's bring it out, man. Get straight to the point. The end goal is in the book of Revelations, the 13th chapter and the 16th verse, which reads, "And cause of all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their forehead," meaning that regardless of who you are in society, to function economically, you are going to need this implant, the chip, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that have understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. And ultimately, you got the barcode system, which is built in that type of manner, but it's spiritual. That the guy behind the barcode system has a 3 names, literally, with the 6 characters in them. Also, it's just spiritual because one of the brothers in the main camp with the elders brought it out, and the Lord's got a real sense of humor, man, and the way that he does things. But yeah, you got a situation where these trade wars are happening in America because what Donald Trump is trying to do is destroy the economy, but he's doing it with the front of putting America first, because what he's essentially saying is, like, these nations have been putting tariffs on America for the longest, and they're treating us unfairly, and we deserve a fair share of the pie, and blah, 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 blah. But all it is, in a nutshell, is he is purposely destroying the economy of America. And I'll tell you why. Because he, rather than working out complicated formulas for any sort of tariffs and the currency manipulation, which is what the media is telling you they're doing, that these countries are imposing on them, or even sometimes not countries, just economic blocks or continents like the European Union. They are basically looking at organizations, and you can watch this video and it will break it down. There's another guy called Sasha Jansen who I watch a lot of, and he breaks down everything like down to a T in very simple terms to understand. Trump is is putting a tariff on countries. Well, these countries are organizations, but countries that basically have a trade that the US has a trade deficit with. So you have two different scenarios. You have a trade surplus and a trade deficit. A trade surplus is when your country exports more to a country than it imports. So, like with the UK, the US has a trade surplus because the US. Let me say it from the perspective of the US. The US exports more to Britain than Britain exports to them. Like, we still take in a lot of goods from America, a lot of like their confectionaries, some of their food, all that chlorinated chicken and shit. But we take in a lot of stuff from America. We take in imports of American vehicles. We take imports of like certain foods, certain sweeteners, certain like I said, confectionaries, certain foodstuffs, some of their services. We receive more from America than we export. In a nutshell, they give us more than we give them. A deficit is where America receives more than a country than it exports. So a perfect example would be China. Like, we have in the UK a trade deficit with China also. They give us more than we give them. You go anywhere and buy stuff from like your convenience stores here in the UK. In the US, it might be your Targets and all those other types of organizations. A lot of the stuff is made in China and Vietnam. China and Vietnam, like cheap labor, they ship it over to the US. It's got that small print, made in China, made in Vietnam, made in Taiwan, and whatever, because ultimately the labor is cheaper. So even though it's expensive, it's a lot cheaper than it would be if you got it manufactured in the US and you had workers working on it that have economic rights and blah 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 blah. Yeah, it's the whole financial system. Now, what this man has done is he's basically identified countries that have more trade coming in to the US, where the US has a deficit, and he's basically divided the imports by the amount of exports, put a multiplier on it of about roughly 2 times, and basically that's given them the formula for which they worked out how much tariffs they're going to put on these nations. So like China actually has like about a 50% tariff. The European Union has about a 30%, 30 going on maybe mid-30s tariff. Canada has another 30%. Mexico probably about the same. Like, basically, they've literally taken the amount of imports, divided it by the amount of exports that they put out to these countries. It's put a 2 times multiplier on it, roughly, and literally have worked that out. Like, you can look at the US government website, and it will give you like a Greek kind of formula. You break it down. You can look at Sasha Jansen's video. He breaks it down. It goes into that. They literally have done the people down to the point where they've literally divided the amount of imports by exports and put a multiplier on it. And they've literally used that to work out how much tariffs they're going to put on these other nations. So China, like I said, got 50%. Mexico and Canada got very significant ones. The UK escaped with like 10%. The European Union got about 30%. And what they're essentially doing is putting a tax on sales as soon as goods hit the border, but that's not being paid by the country that's producing them. That's going to be paid by US consumers if you want to continue buying stuff from these nations. So that's produced by these nations. So if you want to buy your iPhone, whatever it is now, 17, it's 18, 13 from that's manufactured in China or wherever the shits are made, you're gonna have to pay an extra $300, maybe $400 on top of the $900 it already costs. So this shit's gonna be more expensive. You wanna buy a car from Canada or some Mexican goods, you're gonna be paying more for it. You wanna buy from the European goods that have been created by the European Union and shipped to America, you're gonna be paying more for it, even in the UK. So in a nutshell, they've done a very simple calculation, put it forward as something profound. Yeah. And they've literally pretty much, man, dumbed the people down to believing that they care about American goods and putting America first. But here's the thing. America it's not a production state, man. They produce, but not majorly. They're more a service-based economy, like the UK. They provide financial services, all sorts of other legal services, all sorts of services. Mainly, they're not a nation that produces. They don't have the infrastructure to build like they don't have like German manufacturing, for example. America's not known for cars like Mercedes Benz and Audis and BMWs. They don't have the infrastructure to suddenly just put in major tariffs on car manufacturing from other countries, because they don't have the capability to build enough cars in their own backyard for the people. They can't put tariffs on, or just switch tariffs on like these phone manufacturers that have like Samsung and and Apple that have factories in these nations that they've applied high tariffs to, because the phones come from there. Like they can't just train people overnight to develop these in their own country, because they're going to have to pay those people higher costs, and the companies are going to pass those costs on to consumers. So pretty much it's all fucked. They don't have the infrastructure. Trump knows this. He's got very senior elite people around him in the backbenches, and I mean he's got his man Elon really running the country at the end of the day. So he should know this. But guess what? They're purposely destroying the kingdom of America so they can bring in that shit, this controlled chaos. And Jake is suffering at the end of the day. High guy 1 in 6. You have so much and bring in little. Jake are out here, 2 jobs on the go. Some people working free. Some people juggling childcare. We're looking after their children. We're working jobs, leaving the babies with mom and dad and going out to work. But you have not enough. You drink, but you're not filled with drink. You clothe you, but there is none warm. Suffering. And he that earneth wages to put it into a bag with holes, because they will tax you in all sorts of different ways. Here it is in the UK. The UK government has basically secretly passed legislation to allow the tax body HMRC, His Majesty's now Customs and Revenue, HMRC, to liaise with your bank to remove money from your account if they feel you owe them taxes. So there's actual legislation here in the UK where if His Majesty's HMRC Revenue and Customs, His Majesty's Revenue and Customs believe you owe them more than $5,000. So you owe them more than £1,000 in tax revenue. They can raid your bank account if your bank has 5,000 or more pounds in it. So if your bank account, let's say you're a small business or even a person, and you got 5,000 or more in your bank account, and they feel like you owe them tax and you're not being responsive, HMRC can contact your high street bank, and your high street bank has to give them their account details. Whereas back in the day, they would have to summon you to court. Even if you were a small business, you'd have to be pressured to give your account details. They would have to verify as your account details around the whole GDPR and data protection thing, and still then they would have to summon you back to court again to it was a long process to make the payments and blah blah, to take the payments from you and all of that. Now they can just supersede all that, contact your bank and just take the money. Yeah. This is the power that they're being given in this digital economy. I'll read this again. Haggai 1 and 6. You have sown so much and bring in little. You eat, but you have not enough. You drink, but you are not filled with drink. You clothe you, but there is none warm. And he that earneth wages to put it into a bag with holes, because they will tax everything. You get taxed income tax, national insurance. Your employer pays national insurance to hire you. You pay tax on any interest earned on your savings. You pay value added tax when you buy things here in the country. You pay a tax to transact. You pay a tax to to inherit capital gains. So let's say your payments have saved 100k for you, which they worked for and got taxed on already. That money will then be taxed again before it comes to you because of the transfer of wealth. The transfers of wealth are always taxed, whereas the elites that have asset classes and homes and all the rest of it can find loopholes through trusts and different laws to not pay tax on it, and stocks, or very low tax, because ultimately those are not flows of wealth. They are actual assets that hold wealth. Of course, if they wanted to sell their assets, then technically they'd have to pay taxes, but that's why they then have very talented accountants and offshore trading agreements that would allow them to, and trust that would allow them to disguise that money and shield that money. So ultimately they don't pay tax on it. The most basic example of this is when people pay themselves through a limited company, like they will contract and set up a company and pay themselves the base tax rate, and then anything else comes out as dividends, because ultimately they want to pay as low tax as possible and still get their money. And if they pay themselves through dividends, it's like the company giving out money to its shareholders, which is a different process than when you're earning wages, you know. But it's like, I mean, not every brother's got the time on top of all the stuff we got to do to go set up a company and do all of that. I mean, you can do if you want to, but you know, because some brothers are very entrepreneurial and that's all good, but like it's just the way it is, man. Esau Edom has set up a system whereby you get robbed, man. Daylight robbery, corrupt systems. In fact, just give me a second. I want to grab this. Just a second. It's a corrupt setup, man. Just a second. This is the book of Galatians. And that's why it's important to build up spiritual riches where ultimately moth and rust don't corrupt and thieves don't come through to steal, because Esau Edom is stealing from you, man. That's why it's important to build up spiritual riches. Galatians, the 6th chapter, verse let me start from 7. Be not deceived, Yahweh is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. For he that soweth to his flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption, because at the end of the day nothing good comes of the flesh. But he that soweth to the spirit shall of the spirit reap life everlasting. Facts. Let's read that again. For he that soweth to his flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption, because like I said, nothing good comes of the flesh. But he that soweth to the spirit shall of the spirit reap life everlasting. And why is that? Because at the end of the day, man, we're not building our treasures here on earth, man. You know, of course you do what you got to do to get by, but don't make this your crux. This is the book of, Matthew's, the 6th chapter, straight to the point in verse 19. Lay up for yourselves treasures upon earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Facts. And ultimately, if you're focused on spiritual things above, you're going to be focused on doing the will of Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai and doing right by him, man. You know, rather than worrying about how you're going to get rich in this kingdom, trying to be like a Nate, trying to be like a Yohana, like building up carnal riches for the sake of at the sake of your salvation and your dignity, man. Giving up yourselves into Esau Edom, getting pegged like Alizar. Madness. Like, you gotta understand this. Yo, man, evil, man. The love of money is the root of all evil. You gotta remember that. The light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eyes be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. Focused on the truth. Yeah, focused on the kingdom. These are the words of Yahweh Shai, by the way, written in red. But if thine eye be evil, the whole body shall be full of darkness, man. You know, got one eye in the kingdom, one eye on Esau's bag. You know, you're going to fall for the wickedness, because the flesh is wicked, man. If therefore the light that is in thee be darkness, how great is that darkness? Whew! That's right, man. You have certain men out here with an external front of being righteous, but really they're just demons. No man can serve two masters. For either he will hate the one and love the other. Facts. You're always going to have a preference. Or he will hold to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve Yahweh and Mammon. Facts. Therefore I say unto you, take no thought for your life, what you shall eat or what you shall drink, nor yet for your body, what you shall put on. Is not the life more than meat, and the body more than raiment? Facts. Behold the fowls of the air, for they sow not, neither do they reap, nor gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feedeth them. Are you not much better than they? Of course. So, you know, even the birds that don't have an action plan of when they're going to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and, you know, they don't have a set 3 meals per day that they eat. The Lord still looks after them. So how much more us, man? How much more us? Which of you, by taking thought, can add a cubit onto his stature? You can't grow yourself by just thinking of it. The Lord could, but we can't. And why take ye thought for raiment? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They toil not, neither do they spin, but they're looked after. They're watered. And yea, I say unto you that even Solomon, who was Yahweh and the Spirit in all his glory, was not arrayed like one of these. He wasn't as beautiful as a lily. Wherefore also, if Yahweh clothe the grass of the field, which today is and tomorrow is cast into the oven, shall he not much more clothe ye, O ye of little faith? Facts, no? Therefore take no thought, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or wherewith withal shall we be clothed? How we gonna get this money? For after all these things that the Gentiles seek. Now, of course, you look after yourself to the best of your ability. You do what you got to do, but for your heavenly Father knoweth that you have need of all these things. But seek ye first the kingdom of Yahweh and righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Have the mentality that Solomon did, man. Pray to the Lord for wisdom, man, to lead, to guide, to be a good teacher, and the Lord will add all of these things onto you. But don't be worried about the next day and the day after that and a month from now. Take therefore no thought for the morrow. For the morrow shall take thought for the things of itself. Facts. Tomorrow will handle itself. Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. Day by day, man. Day by day. Day by day. And like I mentioned in the previous video, this is the Lord's Prayer here, Matthew 6 chapter verse 5, man. These were all the words of Yahweh Shai, man. Take it day by day, man. The whole world is falling apart, but we understand that it's a necessary evil that has to happen, and ultimately we know that the Lord is sufficient to us maintaining in this truth. Revelations 2:9, Revelations 3:9. Although we're poor, we're going to be rich, man, in the spirit and in righteousness, man, on the other side. This is not our place for that right now, man. How I was tempted of the devil. He got offered every kingdom upon the earth and rulership. But Satan showed it unto him, and he said, "Nah, man shall not live by bread alone, but by," and he said, "This is not my kingdom, man." Look, Satan said, before that, turn the stone into bread, dash yourself off the building. He said, against those two approaches, man shall not live by bread alone and tempt not the heavenly Father, man. Because at the end of the day, Yahweh shall exercise temperance and patience. We ought to do the same. But it's beautiful watching this kingdom be purposely destroyed by these elites and seeing these people lose their minds and lose absolutely everything that they've worked for. But hey, man, like my guy Apocalypse once said, one of my favorite quotes: everything they've built will fall, and from the ashes of their world will build a better one, a kingdom wherein dwelleth righteousness, eternal at that. So Akim and a few Akwaf that are sincere, stay strong. I say unto you a hearty shalom. Yahweh Bashim, Yahweh Shai Bashim, Rukakadash, Barakatam, shalom. Kwam Yashala. Shalom, shalom, shalom.